right, hey everyone, welcome back. Ready for another deep dive?
Always ready to dig in.
Awesome. So it's December 11th, 2024. And today we're headed to Singapore. We're going to focus on a couple of companies making waves, and then we'll take a look at the bigger economic picture there, yeah.
Sounds like a plan.
All right, so first up, we've got Monte Pacific. Now, they just released their quarterly report, and, well, let's just say it's not exactly sunshine and pineapples.
Oh, not the tropical vibes we'd expect.
No, not exactly. And then we'll shift gears and look at Trek 2000 International, a tech company with a past that's, well, pretty dramatic, to say the least.
Ooh, intrigue already. I'm all ears.
Okay, so Del Monte Pacific, their second quarter report, they posted a net loss of, get this, US $22.2 million.
Whoa, that's a hefty loss. Larger than expected.
Significantly larger.
Yeah.
And way deeper than their loss in the same period last year.
So for those just tuning in, a net loss means their expenses were higher than their revenue for the quarter.
Right, exactly.
And, just for context for everyone, Del Monte Pacific is the parent company of the Del Monte Foods brand we all know and love here in the U.S.
Yeah, the canned food, the vegetables, all that.
Exactly. So they're attributing this loss to a few factors: lower profits at Del Monte Foods and, surprise, surprise, increased costs.
Yeah, it seems like everyone's dealing with those rising costs these days. But here's the real kicker. They're actually projecting a net loss for the whole fiscal year 2025.
The whole year. Wow, that's a bold or maybe concerning prediction to put out there.
Definitely a bit of a shocker. But they are aiming for a turnaround in the following years, in 2026 and 2027.
So what's the game plan? How do they plan to pull off this turnaround?
Well, it sounds like they're going for a pretty aggressive strategy, like a major overhaul, reducing inventory, getting leaner, implementing cost-cutting measures across the board, and consolidating any assets that aren't really pulling their weight.
Sounds like they're streamlining the operation from top to bottom, the old tighten-your-belt approach.
Yeah, exactly. And their big objective with all this, restoring their gross margins.
Right, gross margin basically being the profit they make after deducting the costs of actually producing their goods. So basically they're trying to increase the gap between what it costs them to make stuff and what they sell it for.
Makes sense, but, bold plan, sure. But will investors buy it? Before this news hit, the stock was sitting flat at $8.08.
Yeah, that's the million-dollar question, isn't it? How will the market react? Will investors be scared off by these projected losses, or will they buy into the whole turnaround story?
Only time will tell. Now, speaking of companies with a bit of, shall we say, a colorful past, let's move on to Trek 2000 International.
Ah, yes, this is the one I was waiting for. Lay it on me.
So they're facing some pretty serious allegations of fraud right now.
Fraud, huh? That's never a good look for a company. What are the specifics?
Well, OSIM International, they make those fancy massage chairs, right?
Yeah, I've seen those in the mall.
So they and their founder are claiming that Trek 2000's former chairman, Hen Tan, well, he made some false representations. Basically, these alleged misrepresentations led OSIM to buy a big chunk of Trek 2000 shares back in 2015.
Back in 2015, so this has been brewing for a while.
Yeah, and this isn't just some random accusation either. Hen Tan, he was actually sentenced to jail a couple years back in 2022 for accounting fraud. They were hiding the company's poor financial performance.
Ooh, that's not good. Definitely raises some red flags.
Big time. So Trek 2000, they're denying these new allegations, of course, but they've been on the Singapore Exchange's watch list since 2023, so they're already under the microscope.
Yeah, definitely under scrutiny. So before this news broke, their stock was at 0.072 techs, slightly down.
Yeah. So what do you think? Given all this drama, how's this going to play out?
Well, predicting the future of a stock is like, I don't know, reading tea leaves. But even if these allegations don't stick, it's going to take a hit to their credibility. Investors might think twice before jumping in, especially with that accounting fraud history hanging over their heads.
Yeah, fair point. Okay, so we've seen some ups and downs with these individual companies, but let's zoom out for a second. What's the overall economic forecast looking like in Singapore?
Well, from a broader perspective, economists are actually feeling pretty optimistic about Singapore. They're predicting some solid economic growth.
Really? That's good news.
Yeah. A recent survey by the Monetary Authority of Singapore, MAS, they've actually revised their growth forecast upward. They're now predicting a healthy 3.6% growth for 2024.
3.6%. That's a pretty significant jump from their previous prediction of 2.6%.
Yeah, it's a noticeable increase. And it comes on the heels of Singapore's really strong third quarter growth, which hit a surprising 5.4%.
Wow, that's impressive.
Yeah.
What's fueling all this optimism?
Well, a few things. They're seeing a big rebound in tourism. There's still strong demand in key sectors like tech.
Mhm.
And the government's got some pretty proactive policies in place to support economic growth.
Sounds like they're firing all cylinders.
Pretty much. And most economists think that the MAS is going to keep their current monetary policy steady in their upcoming reviews. So, signaling stability and predictability for the market, which is always good for investors.
So it's kind of interesting, right? You've got these individual companies like the Monte Pacific and Trek 2000 International. They're dealing with their own specific problems. But the overall economic picture in Singapore looks pretty bright.
Yeah, it's a good reminder that, even when the overall economy is doing well, there are always going to be individual companies that face challenges, and vice versa, of course. Sometimes a company can thrive even when the broader market's struggling.
Totally. It's all about, like you said, doing your research and understanding both the big picture and the individual company stories.
Exactly. Risk and opportunity are always out there.
Well said. Well, folks, we've just scratched the surface here today, but hopefully this gives you a little taste of what's happening in Singapore's market. Always more to explore, so stay curious and keep learning.
And don't forget to check out the show notes for more resources.
Right. Thanks for joining us for another deep dive. Catch you next time.